Hello, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Hello, yes, and we are back for episode 28 of Ask Rob and Rob. Welcome. We are the people you submit your questions to, and we answer them. Quite simple, really. Simple format. And Rob, simple to put the questions to us.
Yep, very much so. Two ways of doing it depending on where you are. So if you're at your computer, you can just go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast. You'll see a box on there that you can just click, chat away into your computer, looking like a bit of a weirdo to people around you. But by magic, that will be sent over to us and we'll answer it on the show. Alternatively, if you've got your phone in front of you, just pick it up and dial 013 808 00035. That's 013 808 00035. Leave us a voicemail and we will get your question answered. That is what Jacob did, a man with a very deep voice from very far away. Let's listen to Jacob's question.
Hey Rob and Rob, my name's Jacob from New Zealand here. I've been listening for maybe close to about 6 weeks and I came across an episode about inflation and mortgage debt. Sort of more about how inflation erodes debt and whatnot, which I found fascinating. And I do have a question though about interest-only mortgages and what would happen sort of at the end of the term of the mortgage when you've still got, say, $100,000 sitting around in debt. Do you go to the bank and extend the mortgage, or do you turn it into a repayment mortgage, or will you sort of have to keep track of every mortgage you've got and save enough to pay it off in a lump sum? I'm loving the podcast, guys. I'm just not sure of that answer there. You guys make it easy. I love how knowledgeable you are. Keep it up, and I look forward to the answer.
Awesome. Thank you, Jacob. Great voice. I second that, Rob. Right. Interest only. A very, very popular podcast. It's one of our earliest podcasts and still often talked about today. We'll link to it in the show notes, of course. But interest-only mortgages, it's what most investors will use. Why? Well, your cash flow is better. You can make your money work harder. It just makes a lot of sense for buy-to-let investors. However, with an interest-only mortgage, your debt is never paid down. So what do you do? Well, you can inflate your way out of it, for a start. Over time, inflation will diminish the value of your debt. So to give you an example, if you have a pint of milk, today it might cost you 60 pence. Go back 20 years, it may have cost you 30 pence. Milk is still milk, but the 30 pence from 20 years ago is less valuable. And that's what happens with debt. Debt becomes less valuable as well. So if you've got a 100k mortgage today, it might feel like a fair amount. But in 20 years' time, it'll feel like a lot less. And then eventually, that debt will end up just feeling like a credit card debt that you can clear off quite easily. Now, it takes time, but it does work. And that's the thing. Inflation is just that subtle thing that happens in the background that slowly takes effect. However, what happens if your debt isn't fully inflated away? There are other things you can do.
Yeah, there are. What a lot of people do who've built up a bit of a portfolio is that they will sell a couple of properties to clear the debt on all the rest. So say that you start off with a 75% loan to value mortgage. By the time has worked its magic, it's down to 20%. If you've got a couple like that, you might just be able to sell one of your other properties to pay off the mortgage on the rest. Then you've got properties unencumbered that you can live off in retirement, pass down, or whatever. Even if you've only got one property, you can, of course, always sell that property to clear the debt. But as Rob said, because the debt will look like so much less by that point, you won't necessarily need to do that. There'll be other ways of paying it off.
Another thing to take into consideration is a lot of people think, right, I've got 25 years. But that's not the case for most people. Because if you take an interest-only mortgage out today, and then you get a new one in 2 or 3 years' time, if you don't revalue up for a higher amount and keep the same loan amount, in 2 or 3 years' time, you get a new mortgage. But that's another 25 years. So suddenly you're 28 years in. And you could go, well, I'm going to retire at 65. What do I do then? And retiring at 65, lucky you. Most people would be able to, but that's a whole different podcast. Then you can actually, believe it or not, carry on getting mortgages way into your 70s, 80s, and even 90s with some products. The mortgage companies have become alert to the fact that, one, these properties pay for themselves, and two, people are living a little longer than 65 these days. So there are more and more products that cater for people in more mature stages of their life.
Yeah, and this is something that I think people who are newer to property often don't consider, because you're coming from a mindset of wanting to have your own mortgage paid off by the time you retire. That's a completely normal and natural thing to want to do. You also aren't used to wanting to having debt hanging over your head for decades. So if you've got credit card debt, of course you want to get rid of that as quickly as possible. People who've got student loans, but it's a really special day when you actually make that final payment and that loan's cleared. Mortgage debt for buy-to-lets is a little bit different. There's nothing necessarily wrong with keeping that debt going for decades and decades. Of course, that's not for everyone. Some people will want to pay it down. That's fine too. Having that debt does, of course, leave you vulnerable if interest rates go up. So you need to make sure that you've got plenty of headroom. So your property's still an asset rather than a liability on a month-to-month basis. But as Rob said, it's not like a 25 years and then it must be paid back. There's a lot more flexibility than you first think. So while interest-only mortgages and letting them run won't be for everyone, it is worth kind of getting that straight in your head so you can make the right decision about to what extent you use debt and when you want to finally pay it off or pay it down. As we said, there is a very popular episode we did way back when about inflation. We'll link to that in the show notes. So if you go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast, search for episode 28, we will link you to that episode so you can have a listen.
So make sure you go and check that past podcast out, and make sure you go and check out some of the courses on the Property Hub as well. The courses will really add to your knowledge. The podcast is absolutely fantastic, if I don't mind saying so myself. So make sure you utilise that tool, because it is also absolutely free. Go to thepropertyhub.net/courses and you can access them all for absolutely free there. Rightio, that's us done for another week, Rob. Oh, should we come back again?
Yeah, I think so. Well, let's come back on Thursday. We'll do the property podcast then, and then we've got more questions coming in, so we'll do another Ask Rob and Rob next Tuesday. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.